things. I want to talk today about where we are in project management and some of the big challenges that we face. This is what gets me excited about work. Is I love coming into my job and facing a really big challenge. And so that's kind of why I began this company, Teaming Worldwide, and the work that we're doing is trying to engage stakeholders in these big challenges that we face around the world, data challenges and business model challenges, right? Challenges, how do we connect suppliers and customers more efficiently? How do we create less disruption in our supply chains in a world where we have more people than ever and more complex systems than ever? So how do we transform our thinking to be able to address those bigger challenges more efficiently? So today I want to talk about some of the conditions of success. Consider this, I don't want to profess that I have all the answers. I don't. I'm a student of project management. I'm a student of innovation and change. And so these are more like notes from the field. Consider these my thinking right now, and I welcome your questions as we go through, and feel free to disagree with me or challenge me. So here I am. Now you see me twice. And so as Vishal said, I'm a former global director for the special interest groups, which I absolutely love doing. So fun. If you're not a member of the IPMA special interest groups, I encourage you to do that. There's a whole variety of them, and they're really, really wonderful opportunities to meet with a set of people from many different countries. So you can find that at ipma.world. As well, I'm a former IPMA USA Vice President and a passionate supporter of IPMA USA. I am also a member of PMI, as we have to be here in the United States. That's just part of what we do here. And then, of course, you know the rest, right? I am an author and an entrepreneur. So I just really like to do fun stuff. So I'm also a musician. I play music. I love to be in musical groups and do all kinds of fun stuff. So here's my hypothesis for you. Okay? You take this, you can believe it or not, or feel free to challenge me on it. Here's what I believe. Projects are evolving to more entrepreneurial, large-scale efforts that bring together customers, technology, business model changes, platform thinking in new and different ways. We have to rethink these projects because they are much more complex than ever before. And I'm going to give you some examples of what I mean today. Traditional projects, by their very nature, are designed to reduce risk, right? We're in the business of making schedules and risk logs and stakeholder maps and all of this stuff to reduce the risk of a project. And thereby to help ensure that it meets the objectives. But many of these new projects are designed for higher risk endeavors and higher risk environments. Sometimes they come as mega projects, so they're just very, very large, and the risk is, in a sense, incalculable because there's so many factors that are at work. And sometimes they are higher risk because there's so many different pieces to it. The complexity level is such that the risk is increased. The types of training then and certification and the things that we normally do in our projects and to prepare our project managers is no longer adequate to meet the needs of this new breed of projects. And so therefore, we have to recalibrate into a new world. We have to start thinking in different ways. And I will just offer this up as a little bit of evidence of this. When we think about things like product managers, um, these roles that are very much used to be a part of project management, but now we're starting to see this definition of different kinds of roles that are coming out. Sometimes these roles come about to provide more clarity for that area. But what I've also seen, and maybe you have too, is that the project manager sort of becomes a meeting scheduler and a note taker, right? So we become the people who keep all the lists, and the product manager is the one who actually deals with the solution. And so to me, what that is evidence that project management is not, we're not coming at these problems in the right way. So that's my hypothesis, is that we as a field, we have to evolve ourselves. We have to increase our level of knowledge and increase our capability in the world, and show more value, because these projects demand it. They demand higher levels of thinking and scoping and more refinement and all of that stuff. So and let me just say this, Vishal, please feel free to interrupt me, bring up questions as you like.
Certainly, I think what we can do is we can have the last 15 minutes or so for Q&A and audience interaction.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so that's sort of my beginning mindset for the discussion today. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the sort of some different concepts, platforms and business models, digital transformation, and finally get to this concept of the future state, which is a concept that I've been working in and playing around with for I don't know, for the last bunch of years, and which I feel like is one productive place for project management to go. So let's dive into it. Let's start by talking about platforms and business models. So there are companies today, such as Airbnb, that are digital native, right? That is, they were born primarily out of ones and zeros, bits and bytes. And that they were born from a platform perspective, right? Now, what is a platform? So when I say platform, what I mean is that a platform is really a business model that links a supply side, a set of sometimes independent entities. So it's not they're not part of the business itself, but they're independent entities with a set of customer-like entities, which are also independent. So a platform really becomes this middle space that serves, in the Airbnb example, serves property owners, house owners, room owners, others, on the one side, and on the other side serves travelers. And so here what we see is a company, Airbnb, that generates hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue every year, and they own very little assets. Really what they own is their office space, and that's about it. So they don't own hotels or houses. They don't pay the insurance or the upkeep on any of that. All they're really doing is providing this intermediary space, this marketplace, if you will, that links owners and travelers. So that's sort of one of the key definitional pieces here, right? What we know is that we're part of an evolution. This is not something that, like, we can't just look at where we are today and think that this is where we've always been. this is part of a longer term revolution. At the birth of many industries, firms were integrated. When we think about the first large scale pieces, for example, in the first industrial revolution, right? Where we really saw the beginning of mechanization, water power, steam power, we saw factories coming up, and those factories were vertically integrated. So, you had, for example, a Ford who would build almost all of the components of the car right there in the factory. There was very little sub-assembly going on in a Ford factory. One notable exception to that was the tires, the rubber and the tires, which was made by a guy by the name of Firestone. And Firestone and Ford were friends. They lived together. They lived right near each other, and they had a good relationship. But this vertical integration worked for quite a long time until it didn't, right? So there was higher levels of risk involved in vertical integration, and it took a lot of overhead to manage those supply chains. So the industries were evolving, other companies were becoming more nimble, specialized firms began to evolve as we got into the second industrial revolution. And so we see there that there's a larger marketplace of sub-assemblies of specialized firms, such as things like windshields and brakes and other kinds of glass, specialized glass, and spark plugs, right? Using the car example. Many industries today then are even further de-integrated, consisting of firms that help develop one component of a larger product, right? And we can see this in the computing industry, right? And in robotics, where you might have one company in Taiwan that's manufacturing chips and another company in the USA that's manufacturing the iron or the frame, and another company that's developing the optics, etc. So all these different components then come together, and what we end up with is a really complicated set of supply chains that occur around the world. And indeed, India is very much a part of that, right? Both supplying and buying in that complex supply chain market. Huge player in that. So point here is that we should know that now that we are here into our fourth industrial revolution, okay, we've arrived. We are in cyber physical systems phase, right? We have gone beyond the information age, and now we're into this world where we have machines that are operating intelligently and autonomously. And so we have to understand what the complexity is there and how we begin to work with that. So, but we come from this evolution, from this past of these markets. So throughout that evolution then has been this sort of emergence of platform thinking. So platforms really have a couple of different pieces, right? One, they are modular designs, and they help people divide up the work. They move faster, they bring faster innovation in the specific modules, retaining the system. They relate to shared components, and assets are modules. So this is where we begin to get into standards-based work, right? This is how in a platform, this concept of modularity is very important. I need to make my module fit into the larger platform. So what used to be sub-assembly providers now might just be called platform players. They are now fitting into this sort of larger system, this platform, and providing, for example, in the auto industry, it might be headlights, right? The lights on the front of the vehicle Those are in some parts of the world, there are auctions for these things, and how they operate. Most of the pieces are modular, with the exception of the housing, and so all of these things are operated in very specific ways. But they're modularized in order to reduce risk and in order to reduce complexity. So they have to be linked to a larger infrastructure or architecture. And then finally, in a platform, there's digital, right? So there's software tools that are pervasive, and there's hardware potential due to the ubiquity of cheap devices that has reached unprecedented levels of and availability. I mean, today, you and I can go out right now and purchase an AI solution and have it up and running by tomorrow, right? I mean, this is how pervasive these solutions are. When you think about 50 years ago, what it took to schedule, to develop just the schedule, the tasks, and have all those pieces come together in building in constructing a building. How that used to operate with the computers at the time. Today we can do all of this, have a lot of that information automatically filled in. So from a platform perspective, we see modularity and digital as being absolutely intertwined together. And now it's all about big data and AI and IoT and all of these machines talking to each other. And so this is the language of platforms. Project managers must begin to be familiar, be fluent in the language of platforms, because all of our customers out there, we don't just want to create a point solution anymore, do we? I don't want to just create a widget. I don't want to just create a phone, right? My phone has to fit into a larger ecosystem of phones, not only competitor phones, but also I want to create something that keeps you, the customer, coming back to my phone. So I want to create a whole set of apps over here that work with my phone and a whole bunch of other customers over here, all that kind of thinking, right? And so we as project managers have to be thinking at that scale for many of this new breed of projects. So within a business, then, digital transformation looks like, here's what it is. It's the integration of technology into all areas of the business that fundamentally changes this list of things here: process, partners, domain, all these different pieces in a business model. So if you don't know what this view is right here, this is a business model canvas. And a business model canvas really begins here in the center with a value proposition. And in that value proposition, then, we describe sort of how we create value for the customer. What do we do better, faster, cheaper, differentiated? What are we delivering to a customer that enhances their life? And because of that, then we can use customer relationships and channels to reach those customers, and those result in revenue streams. And we can use key activities and resources to drive activity from those partners. So we've got partners that conduct certain activities and deliver resources, and all of that has a cost structure to it. And so this business model then, and there's so much more we could talk about with just this graphic. There are different kinds of business models there, and many of you are familiar with this. So, but if you're not, I would absolutely recommend go and look at the book Business Model Generation. It's right now it's one of the baseline books for this. It's in the canon of this line of thinking. So it's called Business Model Generation, and it will explain a lot of this. But what we see is, from a digital perspective, when we are really thinking about sort of how, think about your customers as you're starting to build out new technologies and new ways to go. and scoping new projects. It is not. It's not very often that we are just working on one area here, right? Just picking one thing and fixing that one thing. Almost always we are expanding these views. We want our customers to be integrated into our resource planning systems, right? We want our suppliers to be integrated into our resource planning systems. We want our customers integrated into our financial systems so that we know that these things are talking to each other, and it provides for better data, faster data, all of that, cleaner automation. We know that these up here are complementers and that there is a lot of open source IP that works, and that we see in that our relationship to competitors is different, right? Competitors now are not quite so monolithic as they used to be. Competitors now are complex entities. We are partners and competitors often, and we can partner with our customers. And our customers may very well be our competitors. So there's a lot there. As well, our excuse me, our value proposition may include open source intellectual property. So a lot of what we're doing might be something that's shared with the world. And so what we have to do here is to figure out how are we sharing that in a value-added way with our customers, right? So as an example, going back to Airbnb, there is this is a replicable system, right? In other words, really, it's not like they have some special secret way that people can sleep in somebody else's house. All they're really doing is providing that house to this. What they add to that then is a badging system, right? You can become a super host. They add in all kinds of other things that would suggest that that this is that you're in an Airbnb environment. So you get the security of knowing that I'm under this brand of Airbnb. I'm not just talking to some random stranger. So there's this real mix of we don't own the property itself, but you're still within our environment. And this kind of thing is going on everywhere, all over the world today, right? We see businesses that are reshaping their relationship to competitors, to the intellectual property they have, right? To the business model complementers. So when we think about platforms, let me take you through another evolution here. All right, and this one's maybe a little bit different than the Industrial Revolution, but the platforms really have gone through 4 waves as well. And maybe we're entering into the next wave right now, the 5th wave. But really, when you think about the first wave of digital transformation and platform, we see things like IBM, Intel, Microsoft, Apple, right? These big companies that created their own ecosystem that was kind of shielded from the rest of the world. And the whole idea was to protect your environment at all costs. In the second wave, we saw things that the world was introduced to things like Alibaba and Google, where suddenly it expanded, right? The information age was upon us. I love this picture here. That's Jeff Bezos right there. And they've spray painted a sign that says Amazon.com here. Right, and look at this monitor that Jeff Bezos is looking at. It's this enormous monitor. So, so these are in the second wave. We saw sort of again these entities, but they were they were formed for software, right? Amazon was a web-based business. eBay came out of a bank, an internet bank that Elon Musk owned, and eventually sort of became this eBay environment. Yahoo as well digital first environment, and Google and Alibaba. This then created the essential elements for social media, MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, right? For these, this was not enough. Amazon, eBay, Yahoo was not quite fulfilling the social needs. And so this sort of third wave of platforms took over. And in this third wave, then we saw actual human to human interaction. We saw people who could interact around things, not just a commerce type of environment, but really around the model was built around commerce, around advertising, but really these sites were around to help build community primarily. And then finally we get into things like the sharing economy, the gig economy, right? Upwork and Freelancer and Uber and Airbnb, of course, right? All of these different environments where we see the relationship where truly our sort of modern day understanding of platforms is today, right? In an Uber environment, Uber does not own the car. Uber does not run the driver. Uber does not run the customer. But there's this cycle that happens where I get rewarded as a driver for taking more rides. And more rides in a sense, creates more customers. And so we see in this fourth wave that there's this really very modern approach to how a company, a corporation, delivers value by having these loosely integrated pieces. Very different, of course, from IBM, who owned the code, owned the machine, sold you all of that. You could only upgrade from them. Different even from Amazon, right? Amazon is a whole different beast, and we won't talk too much about their integration across the cycles, but I'm sorry, across industries. But we can see it's, even an Airbnb is very different from this business model here, right? Where Google was really trying to unlock information and Yahoo trying to create these different interactive spaces. And then as well, MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, more social, and finally into this fourth wave where you're in this truly platform-based environment. So what we see is three different kinds of platform businesses. And I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. So there's traditional platform businesses. So, and these tend to be linear. It can look more like a old school vertical integration. Raw materials turned into products and services. Inventory tends to be asset heavy. GE, while GE does a lot of different things and has a lot of different relationships with its customers and suppliers, one example is Predix, which is their IoT. I believe it may not even be functioning anymore. I'm not sure how many customers there are for Predix, but what it was and what it is their IoT language. It was supposed to be this language that could go across all devices, not just GE devices, and create automation. So they delivered shared capabilities that industrial applications required: asset connectivity, analytics, machine learning, big data, digital twinning, right? So what Predix did was said, okay, if you're running an electrical power supply, a power generation business, you can use Predix to help run that business. You can open up the gates and let the water flow and turn the turbines. You can stop that from happening. You can also run the lines and tell the electricity where to go, etc. So their model was really about sort of how do we integrate it front to back. On the other end, we see kind of like a platform-like business, right? So it's non-linear, facilitates value exchange, tends to be asset light. This is what we've been talking about, right? Includes ride hailing, food delivery, package delivery, couriers, freight transportation, even things like electric scooters, right? So all of these things can be can be sort of asset-light companies that are platform. And then in the middle, you get this sort of mixed approach, right, which leverages elements of traditional and platform businesses. So here we see Apple, which has evolved with an app store. And now, of course, we take all this for granted. Everybody has their own app store, right? But what's interesting, not only this was a really big deal for Apple to open up their code to outside developers. And this was really, as I understand the story, Steve Jobs was very reluctant to open up the code. They were building this absolutely beautiful interface. It was very different from IBM and what the competitors were offering. And they were very reluctant to offer this out. But it was a concession that he made in coming back into Apple when he brought in his Next code from the company Next. He brought in the code, and so out of all that came this idea. Eventually came this idea of an app store. And these open systems such as iOS that were much more available, and the iOS software development kit. So the SDK really helped to create a standards-based environment. So we see that there's a gamut of traditional businesses that are dabbling in platform-like thinking, all the way through to these sort of digital native companies that do this. All right, are you with me so far? So let me keep going here. I hope this is interesting for you. I want to talk about a US-based company. I don't know if you guys have Domino's Pizza in India. Probably not. Domino's.
We very much have Domino's Pizza.
Of course you do. We have
Pizza Hut as well.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have Pizza Hut as well.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, of course. So Domino's is an interesting thing. Domino's, of course, began as a small pizza place and then grew up over time. What they really are is, and this is interesting, their digital revolution came in 2008, roughly, when they had brought on a new CEO. And the new CEO's big revelation was that we are not a pizza company selling pizzas. We are an e-commerce technology company that happens to sell pizza, right? And so as part of this then, Domino's remade its entire front to back systems, from how the customer orders pizza to how that order translates into supply chain and inventory, revenue. If you've been on their app at all, I have 2 teenage boys, young men, and they eat Domino's Pizza like it's the only food on earth. And so I'm quite familiar with this. And these, what you can actually see your order being made as it's going through, all of these things, right? This is commonplace technology, but at the time it was revolutionary that you could do this. Their value in this environment was if you recall, back then what their promise was we will deliver your pizza in 30 minutes or less. And they ran into problems with that. They couldn't control the 30 minutes, right? If there was a big sporting event and everybody ordered pizza, that created problems. Or if there was traffic accidents, that created problems. And what they realized was that one late pizza potentially destroyed that relationship with that customer. That customer would go find other pizza. So they had to shift their value proposition. And so the value proposition shifted to this idea that now you get to choose online and see your pizza. You get to understand where it is in the process and coming to you. And so this really became an amazing way to operate the business, that they are a technology company that happens to sell pizza. And we see this same phenomenon going on in many different industries now. many different companies, certainly food in the food industry, in the hospitality industry, in transportation. A lot of these companies are primarily brokers of technology and data, but they just happen to fulfill their value by doing something, whether it's FedEx and delivery or Marriott and hotels. At the heart of that company is data, and at the heart of that company is technology. Okay, so we see now that the Domino's example is interesting because it shows that they can bring their suppliers in closer through data. They have repositories of data and technology that can be repurposed and used. And the algorithms for pricing in a multi-sided business model. In other words, they can adjust for conditions in places where they're not selling a lot of pizza. Maybe it's very hot and not a lot of pizza selling. They can quickly shift their supply chain because they've got real-time access to this data. So it's really quite a powerful platform that they're building. All right, so, oh my gosh, I need to move and groove here. So let's talk about business ecosystems then. So an ecosystem produces goods and services of value who they themselves are members of the ecosystem. So it's a co-evolution. We create this thing together. And the leadership of an ecosystem is very, very important and common in tech industries. This is important for you as a project manager, because as we are creating these things called platforms, what we're really starting to do is to create a culture whereby people are attaching themselves into this world that we're creating. So leadership is very important. All the basics of project management will apply eventually into this new breed of projects. Okay, so we really have to make sure that we are understanding the larger world within which this works. So there's a lot to talk about here, but this is the High Speed 2 or HS2 project. Okay, each one of these black areas here represents literally a mega project. Each one of these is just an absolutely enormous multi-billion-dollar effort that has been going on. And what we can really see here is that in HS2, in this environment, what we've seen is that this is very much linked to its predecessor project. So these are not independent. This is a rail system that is spanning the UK, I should say that, okay? So it began back here with the channel tunnel, and out of that then came some analysis that led to the Heathrow upgrade, right? So now we're starting to see how transportation across between France and the UK works, and now we're going to increase our air traffic in with that in anticipation of the Olympics. All right, and so you can see how these things sort of are, it's very expansive. And in the construction industry, this is the trend, right? We're no longer just putting a building up. We have very complex building information systems. We have very complex ecosystems within which these built environments are operating. And so you will get these slides, and I won't go too deeply into this, but just know that in the construction industry, then what we've seen is this similar sort of trend where the design aspects of the business used to look like islands of automation, right? Skills, network were established, and then from that we'd go into implementation and then support. Right now, the way it's even evolving from this, but basically what this is talking about is how the built environment is leveraging more than ever automation and BIM technology and deep CAD kind of 3D modeling and all of that too. And not only that, but also understanding of the population, understanding of the use cases of those different spaces in a way that we haven't before, because we're looking for modularity and versatility and all these different things. So, success factors as we are evolving digital leadership, skills and training. We need to be looking for those areas where we can upgrade our teams, right? And we need to understand that there are rules. These are rules. The platform is a rules-based game. We have to create the standards. We have to create the way that the platform will engage. In the old school, we might be calling those requirements. We might be calling those system specifications. But really, these are standards-based rules, business rules. How are we going to operate from the supply side and from the customer side? And what does that all add up to in terms of an ecosystem? Okay. I believe I'm over time. So let me just talk quickly about this, and then I'll open up for questions. So we know that we need a clear business model to create a successful project today. We know that we need a clear design that's modular and scalable to create a platform. All right. We also know that it's important that there's this idea of organic evolution, right? You can't just sort of plan it out 25 years because technology is changing too quickly. So we have to allocate for organic evolution. So then we get into this concept of future state thinking, where it brings together the business model, the architecture, the platform, all of this. Future state thinking to me is what scoping used to be. I no longer think about a project scope. I always think about the future state. The difference is this: a scope, I'm looking at specific requirements and how do I meet those deliverables. And there comes a time for that. But really what I am focused on is, what is that environment? What is that world that my customers, my employer, my employees, my suppliers will operate within? What are the pieces that need to come together to create a cohesive experience, from everything from finance to the built environment to the very way that customers will interact, the screens, all of it. So future state thinking is really about envisioning, where are we going to be at a point in the future? What is the roadmap to get there? How do we get to that point? This is a critical skill that I think project managers sometimes miss. So just quickly along those lines, my work in healthcare, I spend a lot of time in healthcare, and I work with patients and providers to help them come together. And what I often see is these kinds of problems: reactive models of healthcare, access to healthcare. The healthcare is very, very important. And so because access has a lot of friction, we see that it's oftentimes reactive. I'm only going to the doctor when I'm sick. I'm not going to stay well. And so that creates this churn in the healthcare system. When everybody's coming in only when they're sick, it's always a high velocity environment. It's always a lot of strain on the system, as opposed to focusing on wellness. And it creates physician burnout, and there's too much data in these systems, right? We're getting so much data, not only from the machines themselves and from what the doctors are doing, but also from all of the research that's happening out there in the world. So when you think about the ecosystem, and this is a project that I've sort of replayed with a number of different customers, what happens is you see that it just begins to get more complicated, right? The provider is dealing with the patient, and then is sort of the conduit to specialists. But also today we have telemedicine, we have pharma that's automated, we have devices and hardware. Sometimes you're getting a blood pressure cuff to take home, or you're getting a scale to bring to your home. There's payment processing concerns. There's, of course, electronic health records. Now, some of this may look a little different in India, in Europe, And in the US, very much we have these kinds of concerns, right? We have labs and diagnostics, facilities. Of course, the whole world has all of this. The way these things are configured in a government-sponsored system versus in a more privatized healthcare system, these pieces can operate differently. But I would just offer this up to you, that each of these pieces has technology, has deep technology behind it, and they're going in different places. Facilities are being run with digital twins. Telemedicine is being operated with partnerships, right? Hospitals don't own their telemedicine technology. They lease it from a platform, from a software as a service. Specialists have AI-supported technologies. There's blockchain, there's cloud, there's IoT involved in getting these medical devices to talk back to the hospital. And all of it has to somehow fit into a patient and a provider tablet or phone. It is a miracle that we all just don't fall over, right? Because this is such a complicated system that we work in. Here's one view of it. This is the Amazon healthcare digital architecture, and it's quite complicated, as you can see. And there's a lot and it's getting even more so. Right? So there's so much that's happening. Now, this is a technical view of what is really primarily a relationship between a patient and their provider. But you can see that even in healthcare, technology is enabling this sort of platform view, right? So the relationship of a patient and a provider is changing because there's so many other pieces here, and they're all starting to get connected through digital technology. Okay. My words for you. I'm sorry I don't have a practical template for you for today, but I wanted to get this message out. So as you are going into your projects and into your work, think about, what is that business model that we're creating? What is the platform that we're designing? Who are the players in this? Become familiar with business model design and what those are. And think about the organic evolution, right? How do we create those conditions for success? And what can I do as a project manager to fully articulate the future state? So thank you. I know that this was a lot of information. I hope that you will get these slides. And I am, of course, available to talk with you and answer any questions now, or here is my email address, and I'd love to hear from you. So I thank you all so much for hearing me out, and I hope that this was a good use of your time.
Certainly. Yes, I think it was a wonderful session, and the topic was very contextual. What you have mentioned here, and how you described particularly the entire ecosystem in the healthcare space, integrating telemedicine, e-pharma, and through the IoT, the monitoring devices. So it's really good. And so with that, I think we'll open the floor for questions. You mentioned earlier on, actually, Tim, you mentioned about while talking about the different models, you mentioned about the pure play platform companies. So I think I would definitely, something which comes to my mind is in the Indian context, where what we are finding is that, in certain areas, like in delivery services, for example, there is a lot of disruption. And I think the market really is taking a lot of time to settle down, because there is a complete overlapping. So you could have a logistics company, a courier company that may want to diversify into food delivery. You could have an e-grocery company which also wants to go into food delivery, a food delivery company which wants to go into e-grocery. So essentially, there is a lot of complication and there is a lot of disruption and different platforms. And so essentially the challenge is to integrate scale with value and sustainability. So that is
Yeah,
where,
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
so that is where, to some extent, companies that have developed organically and have a traditional presence are are have an headway here than the pure play platform providers, because for them it is essentially a cash burn and they're still sustaining on funding and things, whereas the other companies have more stable business models. So I mean, just from that point of view, certain areas are still evolving.
Yeah, and I would just respond to that. Thank you, Vishal. I would respond to that by saying, an integration of that sort has no inherent innovation associated with it, right?
Yes.
So it's really, a lot of times that's almost taking the market backwards. We're consolidating and creating more vertical integration in a way. And so as a project manager, what I want to look at is, and get very clear about is, are we seeking to innovate? Are we seeking to create something new that's not there? Or is this really about bringing our systems together and creating efficiencies of scale? Those are two very different problems. And how innovative is the e-delivery right business? How are there companies out there that are doing new things? So I would spend time investigating what are some of those new players doing that is truly new and different. Are they using different kinds of vehicles? Do they have different supply chains, et cetera? Are they using vertical farms that are closer in to the actual, so the source of the food is closer in? That kind of thing that might provide some type of innovative advantage. Yeah.
Yes, I think what you said is really right, because there is a difference between disruption and innovation. So, for example, here we have very recently, a buzzword called quick commerce. So, which says that grocery is delivered in 10 minutes. But is it sustainable?
Right.
Many of the companies find that if you're just going by that pure play model and a good platform, it may still not be sustainable, because it's still about cash, even if you have a good supply chain. So certain learnings are there. And I think, as you said, it's more about innovation than just pure play, digital platform for the sake of disruption.
Yeah. When we look at how innovative is something, some of the research that we do is go out and look at what's happening in universities, what's happening in some of these new startup companies, and what kinds of technologies are at work. And all of that then should add up to a compound annual growth rate that's high. That's right. There's a lot of upside to the growth in that market. So yeah, is 10-minute delivery inherently, it's probably not innovative, but maybe there's some underlying technology or a business model that makes it innovative. Being fluent in that language, to me, is really important for project managers today, because the risk is that what's going to happen to project managers is we just get told, go make those two systems talk to each other. Yeah, we just bought this company, make that happen. Well, that doesn't really address the challenge. The challenge is we're trying to reach different customers. We're trying to reach different suppliers and create a different value stream here that generates not only more revenue and maybe higher profitability, but builds out this sort of value approach that will keep us relevant in this new world. So project managers, I feel like we need to be addressing those bigger challenges, and being at the table for that. A lot of times we're not anymore, and that worries me, because we're all very capable, smart people, and we have to have a way to continue our profession, you know, and we are the ones who built our careers around new things, right? We are the ones who are comfortable with ambiguity and new, and, you know, going over to the next to the next hill that we can't see yet, all of that stuff. So, yeah.
Yes, I think great.
Any other question from the members? So thank you so much, Mr. Tim. It's really mind-boggling. The transformation which is taking place is really great. And I don't know after 10 years how the project management will be with that rate of progress.
Who knows?
So thank you
We'll
so
put
much.
a chip in our head.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, even the
Well,
brain,
thank you.
brain is going to be on a chip now. So in another 10 years, so things will be different. Okay.
Well, I thank you.
Also
I thank you all very much for your time today, and I really appreciate it. It's so great to see you all. And Srinivasan, thank you so much for the
Thank
invitation.
you, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. So
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Yes.
Have
Okay,
a good day.
Visha. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.